Hey, hi everyone. My name is Sushil, and I'm having a overall 25 plus years of IT experience, and specifically 15 plus years of experience in the IT projects administration. I have picked a topic for you that is theory of constraints. While dealing with various clients, as I establish myself now as an international consultant in the IT projects administration. So, discussing about today's topic, while dealing with the IT projects, we need to opt a theory of constraints because we know every system have a constraints which blocks the inertia of the project flow. So before that constraints identified by other, it's better as a manager, we need to identify the blockers, the limitations, the constraints in the system, and then there is a theory behind this, how to handle and manage the theory of constraints that we are going to discuss today. So allow me to share my screen. Here it's a topic for a day. As I already discussed with you, the importance of this today's topic is we need to deal with various constraints, limitations. Every time in the Scrum meet, we ask the team members what you had done yesterday, what is the agenda for today, and have you got any blockers? As an administrator, as a project manager, we need to address that all the blockers immediately. Theory of constraints suggests the same. As you are monitoring, sole responsible for monitoring and controlling the system. As a manager, as an administrator, you'll be looking towards the entire system by bird's view. Once you identify the constraints, once you find that, this becomes the limitation for, as I said, the inertia, then you need to address it and evaluate it and do the steps for suggested by the theory of constraints to overcome it. Let's discuss it one by one manner. The theory of constraints introduced by Elio Glodred is a methodology for identifying and addressing the most critical limiting factor in every system. As I just discussed, we need to identify that limiting factor. What is the limit? What it is limiting us to achieve that all the objectives set, the goal set. In IT project management, theory of constraints helps teams maximizing throughputs, reduce bottlenecks, and deliver value faster. What is the limit? Why the things are limiting? Why the performance is bottlenecks, right? Why we are not maximizing the throughput? to overcome all the challenges as an administrator, as a manager, theory of constraints is useful. What core principles we need to follow in theory of constraints? As we discussed, every system has a constraint. There always at least one bottleneck limiting performance. We need to identify what limiting the performance, whether it's a slow testing, for example, legacy of code, right? Whatever. These are the examples over there. Because every system is a part of various subsystems. So while performing various Scrum ceremonies throughout the day, we need to identify what is the constraint, right? Whether it's a testing, whether somebody is like understanding, right? Somebody might not be understanding the user stories. So you need to elaborate. Somebody may have the challenges in the coding. Somebody may have a challenges in the testing. So many things are there. So identify that constraint, exploit the constraint. Now, once you identify as an administrator that this is a constraint, optimize the constraint before investing elsewhere. And so once you find that this is the blocker, this is the bottleneck for which is limiting the performance, right? Before investing your time or before like moving ahead, just address that, optimize that constraint. If manual QA quality analysis is an issue, then automatic deployments suggest the automation, right? If somebody might be facing challenges in the understanding, make him understand, right? Suggest the pair coding over there so that like together they can able to resolve the issue. Go into the deep of it, what exactly the issue and how we can resolve it. So it is exploiting the constraints. Subordinate everything else. To overcome that constraint, what we can develop a support system. What I can do, what team member can do, right? Who is having the best knowledge about that? What is the alternative solutions for it? That all need to be addressed, and we need to provide the support and subordinate that every entire system should be support to that, like support to that particular constraint so that it can be removed. Elevate the constraint. Invest in permanently removing the bottleneck. Right? If we identify this is what the constraint, we provide the support systems, we exploit it, and the final is elevate it, remove it, so that it should not remain in the systems. And once you able to remove that, then identify the next constraint, repeat the entire process again. And this is exactly the core principles of theory of constraint. Now here, what are the common constraints we find in the IT projects management? The skill gaps, lacks of DevOps expertise slowing deployments. Means sometimes it has been observed that because every in case of agile practice, right? Every module, whenever you are defining, every model is a project, right? So it should be that designing, development, deployment, testing. Every story need to be tested on the URLs, right? You have to develop the testing servers, then production server. So every sprint, whatever the stories you define in the sprint, as per the velocity of the team, right? It has to be delivered on time. If it is get delayed by one day, also it costs the entire team as well as the stakeholders as well. So while planning the sprint, as per the velocity of a team, and there are the various matrices we need to find out while defining the sprint. So if there is any gap, not about the DevOps operations, but if it is any gap you find after the allocations, you need to one has to overcome that at the earliest. Train the team. hire the specialists if required. It's like there has to be some to overcome that particular bottleneck. What alternative we have? We need to take immediate actions on it. Sometimes legacy systems, right? Monolithic app deployment features over there. We need to tech stack. We need to update or refactor it to microservices. Testing bottlenecks, manual QA, release delays over there. So if that is the constraint, automate to the suggest the automate testing, or rather than suggesting, you as an administrator, you need to opt that. Resource allocation, overloaded backend team. If adequate resources are not available, then reassign the task, pair programming, or use pair programming. These kind of stuffs are there. And like if budget limitations, right, can't scale cloud infrastructures, then optimize cost, serverless spot instances. Means pick some of the constraints, right? We get during the IT projects management, and probable solutions recommended by the TOC, right? Applying TOC to IT projects, as I already discussed, like this, if you want to divide into the various steps, identify the constraints, exploit the constraints, subordinate non-constraints, right? Obviously, like that constraints, if there are 5 groups or 5 part of the systems, and one part is not functioning properly and having the constraint, then all 4 have to support that, so that the will have to move as per the inertia, right? And then it has to be processed accordingly, the faster, and the goals can be achieved. Elevate the constraints, right? And then finally find the next constraint. So in this manner, theory of constraints recommend that as an administrator, you need to find out the constraint, identify the constraint, exploit it, subordinate it, elevate it, and then repeat this process again and again to make that entire systems blocker free, constraint free, right? Like theory of constraints versus Agile and DevOps. Agile focus on the initiative delivery. Theory of constraints ensures Agile isn't block the bottlenecks. DevOps automates workflows. TOC identifies the workflows need automation first. Yes, like obviously there are various ways. Every methodology is designed for the purpose of removing the blockers and achieve the goals as per the it sets over there, right? So while performing all the agile operations, theory of constraints, as I just elaborate the steps over there, we have to follow that steps and then go ahead with the development over there, right? It's a normal everyday practice we need to follow, right? Of the theory of constraints over there. So by this particular topic, what we can learn, what is the expect out? Okay, focus on the bottleneck, not just working harder. Means every time we are not supposed to just work harder, we have to work smarter also, right? Means like just discussion won't work, right? We follow the technique called as STAR technique, right? Situation, right? And then like we will be performing the actions and the responses over there, right? We'll recommend the test. So focus is on the what it is limiting, right? So instead of carrying on that limiting factor, we need to find out the mechanism by which we can overcome that. Short-term fixes plus long-term investments both matters, right? Like we need to understand one factor that to move to achieve all the objectives over there, if the goal is harder, right? So sometimes we need to do the short-term fixes. We need to we have to but only short-term fixes won't work over there because it will become big later. So for the long-term investments also, because considering that the final objective of the projects are more right now, maybe we are focusing on only the sprint, right? But like final objective of the projects are the different, and then once you identify the small constraints over there, and based on the long plan, so that like it will be removed forever. So theory of constraints by removing flow blockers, as we discussed, like okay, what are the blockers are there in the inertia, the flow, we need to overcome it, and then in this manner This theory of constraints will provide the various advantages while working with the IT environment. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to express my views on the theory of constraints. Obviously, in these short durations, I try to explain you about the theory of constraints, right? Like in the real demonstrations, I'll be elaborating it much more for because I may have a good trying to explain it well over there. So hope you like these particular demonstrations, right? And thank you for giving me this opportunity to express.